well, I won't say it happened when I saw the podcast, because I could be wrong, but has since then, that we don't have any idea what happened, because people who once might have known what happened don't. They don't remember anymore, because it's all been driven out of their minds. And I really think that is what happens. And I have some personal anecdotes from life about memory like that, but this is already going on far too long. The other thing I want to say, and the only place I'd have any quibble with what Bob said, was you may have remembered in the podcast, he talked about, why did the investigators bring in this thing about Adnan and Hay getting together intimately at a hotel at some point? And said, well, maybe there, and Bob thought, well, there must have been some evidence of that happening. And I don't know, I haven't been deep on Reddit, maybe there is, but I had a different response. When I'm taking a deposition, there are a lot of tactics and techniques you take to try to get information from people. I wouldn't call them tricks, but you have to present questions in a way that can get beyond a person's defenses, training, because if I get to, let me give you an example. Firm I work at, we represent mostly Fortune 500 companies in a product liability, mass torts, and class actions. And again, there's two sides to every story, so I'm not trying to push any kind of agenda here. But what often happens in product liability cases is for different reasons, because of immunity or bankruptcies, or because the government maybe was the worst culprit. That's certainly, in my opinion, is the case with asbestos in the military, and the government in many ways is immune from lawsuits. When the plaintiff, the asbestos plaintiff, who often is very sick, or it's a family member of someone who died from mesothelioma, when they come to time in a deposition to identify a product, they tend to remember the products that are associated with your client, and not remember the products that are associated with their work with the military and bankrupt entities. And why is that? It's not because, I'm convinced of this in most cases, I mean, I have to say that any group of people, plaintiffs who are dying from terrible diseases like mesothelioma or whatever, are the most wonderful people in the world. So I've been in tears during those depositions, because just in sadness, but also in admiration for a lot of these people. Anyway, a lot of it, I think, is because when they bring this lawsuit, the plaintiff's lawyer obviously knows what's at issue in the case. And what's at issue when you're a plaintiff is not that there was this tremendous exposure to asbestos when I was in the military in World War II, because you're not going to get anything from the government. It's whatever thing happened when I was sanding a house, doing home work on a home project in the 1960s. And so when that plaintiff, who maybe hasn't thought about any of this stuff in 50 years, they had not thought about what joint compound they were using when they were building their house from scratch and using a kit in the 1960s. So they remember what is useful to remember and don't what isn't, because that's what they're presented. And so the point is when I'm taking a deposition, I'm going to try to take into them out other sources of information, maybe newspapers, maybe other things that might suggest to them that there's more to the picture, so we can paint a full image. Okay, I was going somewhere here. So that's what I do in product cases. Oh, yes! Sorry. This hotel thing. So sometimes when you're doing that, you don't want to necessarily have a narrative line of questioning. You want to move around a little bit. And the reason is, and I don't think it's dishonest, you want to reverse engineer some of that programming they've had from their lawyer to get at what you think is a more realistic picture of what happened. And so you do that by breaking up their story so it doesn't go along with the narrative that they have in their mind about what happened. That they've been. Oh yes, okay. So someone pointed out that what Bob was saying is the questions about the hotel might point to there being evidence of a hotel room, not that they did that. That's not my point. I'm sorry, I'm being very long-winded. My point is that the hotel question might have been not a ruse, but a way to distract Debbie so she wouldn't backtrack on what she said, because I kind of witness like Debbie is going to be maybe long-winded, and is going to be in a kind of stream of consciousness when they're talking. And so if you allow them to just think and sit on a question, they're going to keep adding stuff. And they might add stuff that's not helpful. So I think that's what the police did, my thought, was they had the hotel thing. After they got a real zinger to get Debbie not thinking about, well, what did that mean when they got that zinger? Because again, she doesn't know necessarily what's important. And so I think that's what was going on with the hotel. I'm thinking this investigator said, okay, we got her on, hey, maybe, and I forget all the details, maybe Anand got the ride in the car. And, maybe they were getting together at a park. And what about a hotel? And she's like, hotel. And she's not thinking about the park. So I think that's probably what happened, but I could be wrong. Okay, that's all I've got. I'd be happy if anyone's got any questions or comments or anything like that. I talk longer than I intend to, which is pretty much always the case. You can ask my wife. But if anyone's got any thoughts about anything, I'd be happy to address it now. Thanks, Brendan. Oh, thank you. And one other thing that I'll just say, and I'm gonna get out from this, is some of you know I am with two other lawyers in the Twin Cities area launching. Doesn't that sound so, I don't know, grandiose? Starting a podcast called the Serial Lawyer Podcast, and it's about. It's going to follow Serial Season 2, which should be starting within the next few weeks. And so we're going to just talk from some of our perspective of lawyers, but also as storytellers and touch on a lot of other things, just like the first season of Serial did. And we're planning on bringing in some people, interviews, who, let's say if it's an issue about memory or forensic psychology, we would bring in someone like that. And we would have them, and it would be part of what we're talking about. So that was not a very good explanation. But that's... Yeah, someone said, I think Serial will stop you using the word serial in your podcast name. Maybe. They might. They didn't do that last time. But they could this time. So we'll see. The following shows, like Slate and Onion did last year, had... they had serial in their title. But if so, then we'll just work with it. I mean, hey, it's a champagne problem. If there's enough people are there listening, that it would come to their attention. I think someone said why Bob's changing it. I think there was, maybe, I'll ask Bob, I think part of the problem was his logo had a bunch of serial stuff on it. So, someone said, I want them to study legal topics anymore. That's great, and I should say that I really believe that if the legal system's going to improve, if we're going to do things better, we're going to need to have involvement from non-lawyers, because a lot of lawyers, we've been trained in ways that aren't helpful. But someone said about the appeal process, so I just want to say kind of a background, not a criminal defense lawyer, but where things stand now is an appeal. When you appeal something, the record and the decision that's being made by the appellate court is often pretty limited. So whereas at trial, right, any day at trial, I can have a witness, I can do lots of stuff. An appeal, with few exceptions, you're limited to the record that came out at trial. So Adnan Syed is limited to the record at trial, and in most cases. And so what's going on now is we have an attempt to supplement the record because of misconduct, generally, either ineffective assessments of process or maybe a Brady violation. And so as supplementing the record and maybe getting into trial, that's where the Asia affidavit comes in, that's where the cell phone records comes in. And someone said it's convoluted. Well, that's a good point. The problem is that you want to have a fine